Hello?
chatzos, until midnight. Again, midnight doesn't mean 12, like we would think we would translate midnight. Midnight means the exact middle point of the night. Now, so today, here in Florida, I'm not exactly sure when Shkia is, but Shkia means sunset. Sunset is approximately, let's say, 7:35. This morning, I prayed at the Nate's Minyan, which is a minyan that a service in our town that they have a service that they recite the Shemona Esrei exactly at sunrise. So sunrise today was 7:23 exactly. So they made sure to be right up to the Shema, right up to the Shemona Esrei at sunrise. So if you want to know when midnight would be exactly in between 7:35 and 7:23. And it's somewhere around closer to 1 o'clock, not 12 o'clock. And of course, you could look it up online exactly when midnight would be. But that would be the rabbi's opinion when the last time to recite the Shema is. So if you're going on a long trip and you're going to get there around midnight, what you would want to do, according to the rabbis, would be say the Shema, or maybe daven Ma'ariv before you arrive, because you might arrive too late. Now, there is a third opinion. Rabbi Gamliel says, Ad sheyala Amar HaShachar, until the morning star appears. And you have all night until dawn. And basically, there's a three-way argument here. Rabbi Eliezer, the rabbis, which sounds like a group of rabbis, and Rabbi Gamliel, and it goes in the order of the night. The first opinion would be 4 hours into the night, maybe around 10, 11 o'clock. The second opinion would be more like 1 o'clock nowadays here in Florida, and the third opinion would be all night. You have to recite the Shema. Now let's think about this. What does the Shema say? When are you supposed to recite it? What does it say in the Shema? Vishinanta b'levanecha v'dibarta bam. You should teach these to your children. You should speak of them. V'shivtecha b'veisecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech, when you go on your when you sit in your house, when you go on your way. U'v'shachbecha, when you lie down. U'v'kumecha, when you get up. So the Mishnah, the verse tells us that reciting the Shema is connected to lying down and connected to getting up. So which opinion do you think fits? Lying down, which one would that be? So what it seems like is that there's different ways of reading, of understanding what it means lying down. Does it mean the act of lying down, or does it mean the amount of the being, the state of being in a horizontal position, lying down? So to make this practical, depending on how you translate that, this could be the argument here, because Rabbi Eliezer, who says you have the first 4 hours, the first third of the night to say the Shema, he's probably understanding it to mean when you go to sleep, when you go to lie down. And different people go at different times. So, but generally, it's the first 4 hours people go to sleep. I wish I could be from the general group that does that, but that's the general time people go to sleep. But then you have the other way of looking at it, that it means when people are lying in a position of lying down, meaning people are sleeping, and that's throughout the night. That would be Rabbi Gamliel. And the rabbis say a midpoint of chatzos. Now, how do we understand the rabbis? The rabbis may be saying that, well, Rabbi Eliezer, in his town, people go to sleep the first 4 hours, but the rabbis where they live, or maybe they argue with him and say, no, the general public goes to sleep until midnight. It's not the first 4 hours. Maybe they're arguing on what the general public does. Maybe maybe they felt maybe they were including more inclusive of what the general public opinion is, or maybe they hold like like Rabbi Gamliel that really you have all night. However, they are for some reason telling you that you have a limit, a time limit, and you have to stop at a certain point because we're afraid that if we let you go further, you might end up forgetting the Shema. So there's different ways of understanding the rabbis, but I think this gives us a much better understanding of how at least two of the opinions can be understood. The two extreme opinions maybe are explaining the verse uveshachbecha, when you lie down, to either mean the act of going to lie down or the state of being, and that possibly is what the argument is. And of course we're studying the Mishnah, and we're going to wait for the Talmud, to see how the Talmud, and if this idea maybe will work or maybe won't work. We're going to be seeing later in the Talmud, we have a number of pages of Talmud on this Mishnah. Now, but I will tell you that we are going to have a little clue now soon with the continuation of the Mishnah. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Manny Lax.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to match the recitation of the Shema with the angelic watches? I don't quite understand it. What is it, a more propitious time to say it during those watches? Or does it nullify it if it's not said during those watches? I don't quite understand.
Yeah, so that question is a great question. Very similar to you could also ask, what I maybe hinted to is, why are we connecting the Shema with the Kohanim eating Truma? And you're adding the next part to that question, why are we connecting the Shema with the watches? In other words, it goes hand in hand, both of those questions. And the answer to your question is really on the next page, which is page Gimel Amud Aleph, page 3, side 1. I don't want to give you all the answers now, but it will be discussed there, and we will, God willing, have an answer to your question. So there is a reason, and it's a good point. Why is the Mishnah, and that's something that we should be thinking about. What is this idea? What do we care about the angels and so on? So maybe we'll discuss it when the Talmud explains that
That question may also tie into, I know that David HaMelech used to get up after midnight, after the mid portion of the night, to recite prayers, Tehillim,
right.
And because it was deemed by him to be a most propitious time to say it. So it may all tie in.
Well, it definitely could, because this is the Talmudic statement that you're quoting is in this discussion of David HaMelech. It comes in the next few pages, that statement. So, God willing, let's see if we could connect it, and if the Talmud connects it, yes. So great point, Minnie. Howard.
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. A two-part question, if I can. So there seems to be a three-way disagreement on when the latest time you could say. Does everybody agree with the opinion about when the earliest time you could say? And my second question is, would the Kohanim purposely go to the mikveh as late in the day as possible? And if so, what was the reason for that?
Great questions. Unbelievable. Home run. The first question that you asked is really something discussed. In other words, there's two ways of reading the Mishnah. If you read the Mishnah, let me say it outside the first sentence of the Mishnah. From when can you recite the Shema? From the time that the Kohanim eat Truma until the first watching. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Now, what does that mean? What did Rabbi Eliezer say? Did he say that whole sentence? Or did he just say the last half of the sentence? Until when? These are the words, until the Kohanim eat Truma, these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. So the first part of the statement, you could read as the Mishnah telling you a fact. And it's not giving you a name of who says it. And the Mishnah often does that. It doesn't tell you the name of who says it. Sometimes the Mishnah will just say a statement. And so you could read the Mishnah. When do you recite the Shema? In the evening, from the time that the Kohanim eat Truma, period, until the end of the first watching. That's the words of Rabbi Eliezer about until. Until when is the words of Rabbi Eliezer? But the first half is really the Mishnah telling you a fact. Or you could read it that it's entirely one sentence, and Rabbi Eliezer says both of these points. And the Gemara later will actually touch on this. So a very good question. Now, the second question you asked, remind me. My mind is on the first question. What was the second question?
About the Kohanim. The time that the Kohanim would go to
would they go to the mikvah at the end of the day? So it's interesting that you asked that. I wonder what brought you to think. Why do you think that?
I would guess that in case they were still tameh, impure, they wanted to wait till the end of the day. So in case something happened during the day, they could still become tahor, pure by the end of the day. Maybe. Exactly.
That is what is brought down. Now it's discussed in the commentaries on the second page, on the second side of this page. It's used to answer a question. There's a question on the Gemara that this answers it. So you would find it in the commentaries. It's not on the Talmudic state. It's not in the Talmud itself. But that is true. They mentioned that people would wait till the end of the day in order, in case they became impure again, they would want to. They would generally wait till the end, but you didn't have to. So obviously, if you had a mikvah in this town and you were heading home, obviously it didn't happen always that way, but it generally would be that way. People would push it off till later so that they would be able to cover themselves if during the day they became became impure. Okay, so now that we've discussed the first part of the Mishnah, now the Mishnah tells us a story. Maisa. There's a story, Uvo Vanov mi Beis HaMishta, that the children came from a wedding or a Beis HaMishta. Beis HaMishta literally means a house of drinking. But the children of Rabbi Gamliel came from this affair, this great event, and Amru Lai, and they told their father. Again, this is Rabbi Gamliel's children. Now, let's remember, what did Rabbi Gamliel say? When do you say Shema until? Until the morning, until dawn. So you have all night to say Shema. Now, his children came back very late from a wedding, and they said to him, Loi karinu es Shema, we did not recite the Shema. What should we do? Can we still recite the Shema? Amar lahem, and Rabbi Gamliel told them, Imloi Allah Amud Hashachar. The morning star did not rise. Chayaven atem lekrois. You are obligated to read the Shema. So Rabbi Gamliel is telling them his opinion, right? It seems like he's telling them his opinion that you have until until dawn. But then the Mishnah continues about that his statement continued, V'loizu belvad amru, and not only this did the rabbis say, Ella, but Kol ma she'amru chachamim ad chatzois, all that the rabbis said that you have, all the cases that the rabbi says you have until midnight, mitzvasan, their mitzvah is ad sheyala amad hashachar, until the morning star rises. So there are other cases where the rabbis said until midnight, and there's this case where the rabbi said until midnight, this case of Shema. Now the other cases one of the examples are eating kudshim, eating holy foods. There are certain sacrifices that you are only allowed to eat until the next morning. Once the morning comes and they were not eaten, these are the portion of the sacrifice that was edible, that was edible for the kohanim, or for anyone. Actually, certain sacrifices were allowed. Certain portions of the sacrifices were allowed for any Israelite. These portions had certain time limits. Some of the karbanis were 1-day karbanis. Other karbanis are 2-day karbanis. The 1-day karbanis are supposed to be eaten before the next morning. However, the rabbi said you have until midnight. You don't have all night. You can't do it all the way until morning. You got to stop at midnight. Now, the 2-day sacrifices, they had the whole day until the next day, until the night of the next day. So those are the 2-day sacrifices aren't applicable here. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the 1-day sacrifices. Chatos, Asham, Toida, these are 1-day sacrifices. Menacha is the carbon minchas. So these sacrifices, the rabbi said you have until midnight. So what we're seeing is that even though the law, from the letter of the law, you really have all night for certain things, Shema and eating sacrifices, but the rabbis gave us a deadline, midnight, even though you really should have all night. And now we're going to read the final words of the Mishnah. All that are eaten for 1 day, all the 1-day sacrifices, mitzvasan ad sheyale omer hashachar, their mitzvah is, the time of eating is until the morning star rises, until dawn. Im kain, if so, lama amru chachamim ad chatzos, if so, why did the rabbis say until midnight? Kedei, in order, laharchik adam min ha'avera, to remove one, to make one far from sinning. So because the rabbis understood that if a person pushes things off, they end up being forgotten, the rabbi said, do it before midnight. In this way, you won't forget. Vasan, their mitzvah is ad sheyale amar hashachar, until the morning star rises. So that is another example, not of midnight, the midnight rule, but of the all-night rule. That many of the laws of the Torah have an all-night rule, and certain ones the rabbis made a cutoff time of midnight. And again, those are the 2 cases that I mentioned. One is the one we're talking about here in this chapter, which is the Shema. And the other one is something that's applicable to the laws of sacrifices, and that would be eating the 1-day sacrifices. These have a deadline of midnight. Are there any questions? Okay, I guess it's fully understood. So let's just go over the Mishnah in this last minute that we have. The Mishnah gave us a beginning time for Shema, and that is the time that the Kohanim enter to eat Truma. After they went to the mikvah and after the day ended, they are allowed to eat Truma. That is the moment that they're also obligated to say Shema. That's the beginning moment. And the end time to say Shema is, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the end of the first watch, which would be the end of the first third of the night. On a regular day that that the sun sets at 6 and the sun rises at 6, that would be midnight. It would be 4 hours. On a day that it's different, it would of course be it would be off a little, but that's the first third of the night. However, wherever that reaches, whatever time that is, that's Rabbi Eliezer's cutoff time for Shema. The Chachamim, the rabbis, say until midnight, which also is not exact. It fluctuates. It's midnight is based on when sunset is and sun rises, and exactly in the middle. And Rabbi Gamliel says until the morning star rises, until dawn, and you have all night basically to recite the Shema. And then the Mishnah brought a story of his children coming back late, and he told them, you are still obligated even after midnight to recite the Shema, because the rabbis the rabbis told you till midnight. That was more of a fence around the Torah, and it was in order to make sure in order to make sure that you don't miss the real cutoff time, which is really the dawn. So according to the end of the Mishnah, it sounds like Rabbi Gamliel is saying that the rabbis only said their law preferably. You should, what happens in a case where you missed out, you should still recite the Shema. Okay, so that really concludes the Mishnah, and look forward to seeing you all either tonight at 3 or tomorrow at 10. Have a wonderful day.
Rabbi,
Yes.
can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
This is just a technical suggestion. On your video, on your picture, the top half of your screen is the mirror, and the bottom half of the screen is your face. But the bottom half of the screen, it comes right about here. And when you bend down, it comes like in the middle of your chin. You have a lot more room above your head to move your profile up. And with Rabbi Cohen, it's the opposite. His screen cuts him off right there, right there. And there's a lot of room, there's a lot of room to move it up to sort of catch the top of his head and more of a profile instead of just, coming to his forehead. If it's able to be adjusted, it's easier to look at.
Okay, makes me feel good. It sounds like sounds like I have a nice face.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Sei gesund.
Thank you. Bye-bye.